Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Tom Poland, the Professional Services Director at Acumen. Today we'll be talking about best practices for oil and gas projects using the Acumen suite. I want to give you a little background on our company before we get into the slides and the software demonstration. You're going to see this word a lot today, analytics. You're going to see risk consideration. You'll probably see us use the word quality plenty of times along the way too. In fact, there's analytics again. We're in the space of project management software, but maybe not what you're typically accustomed to. We're not focused on generating data. We're focused on analyzing data, turning it into information to support various analyses processes. Our core concepts really are, and we believe in this. This isn't just bullets on a page here. Project success requires a sound plan. It's just like the foundation of your house or the tires on your or the tires on your car. You absolutely need that strong foundation if you're going to be successful with your project. And then recently, we've developed this follow-on statement to say if you're forecasting, you absolutely need to consider your risk and build or bake your risk into your forecast. Both of these concepts, not only I'll be demonstrating them today, but I'll be showing you how you can use each of these two concepts with the Acumen software to achieve the goal of an on-time project execution and a forecast that readily incorporates the risks that you think you may experience on your project. A couple nice things we like to talk about here. Some recognition we've received in 2012, Planning Innovation of the Year, the Inc. 500 Award. Our legacy, we're not new at this. We have over 20 years. Our leadership has over 20 years of project management software development, including OpenPlan, PertMaster, Fuse, our trademark schedule index. We have performed risk workshops. We're now performing metrics workshops and other what I consider to be industry-leading activities with regards to analytics and risk. One thing you'll hear me talk about, and in fact you'll see this manifested within the software, is our S1 to S5 schedule maturity model. And our different software products line up very well in our model. In fact, that's no coincidence that this is what we've driven towards, is to be able to allow you to follow the S1 to S5 schedule maturity methodology using our products. S1 might be a bit of an exception because for S1, which is building the schedule basis, building the baseline, getting to that first plan, we want you to use the schedule tools that you're already using, whether that be MS Project, Primavera, Phoenix, or some of the others. S2 is really where we get into Fuse, which is this critiqued phase. Project diagnostics, we could say analytics once again. And this is where you're going to understand what exactly is in that schedule and what sort of quality number or quality index you can put on that schedule. Because frankly, if you don't have a certain level of quality, you don't want to leave the S2 phase. Because if I create a risk-adjusted schedule on a schedule that doesn't have a very solid foundation, I'm just kind of spiraling down into progressively lower quality. So S2 is paramount, and it's paramount to revisit even as you advance to the other phases to say, does my schedule hold water? Is it linked? Does it meet various indices that we've determined are optimal for a high-quality schedule? On to S3, when we think we've satisfied the criteria of S2, we go into a risk-adjusted schedule. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about having a sound forecast needs to be, take risk into account. Well, at the point of schedule baseline, the entire remaining work is your forecast. So that's an opportune time to perform your risk analysis, begin your risk register, and map those risks to specific activities in your schedule, run the Monte Carlo simulation, and see which risks are driving your expected finish date the most. If that's not tolerable, you've got more work to do because you need a path as a good program manager, as a good program execution team, you need a path to success. If your schedule won't support success, I virtually guarantee you won't be successful. So if the S3 exercise doesn't go very well, and from my experience it often doesn't, the schedule tends to get longer from a risk adjustment, not shorter from a risk adjustment, that's where we move into Acumen 360, which will help you optimize the project and find those opportunities to still finish on time without removing the impact that the risks are having on your schedule. In other words, process A might be strongly affected by risk and push the schedule out 6 months. But if there's opportunities for process B, which follows process A, to occur in a shorter amount of time, maybe there were constraints and lags in process B that don't need to be there, that the team can commit to working without, you might just end up with a schedule that's on target or pretty close to target after the risk-adjusted exercise. Also in the Acumen suite, we've got the tools to be able to report and demonstrate the information that you have in your schedule through the risk-adjusted schedule, through the optimized schedule, to get team validation and buy-in so that it's a plan that everyone can not only live with, but they can work towards and execute as well. So again, you'll be seeing these S1, S2 through 5 as I'm using the tool as well. If I don't point it out specifically, and I'm going to try to, you're going to see it right across the top menu bar of the application. So you'll always know what process I'm working within as I'm using the various tabs in the application. Okay, here's some research we've done, and this is absolutely amazing. And not only are we going to talk about how we've done this past looking, we're going to talk about one element of the application that shows us how projects are correlating their quality to their on-time completion. We're going to show you that in real time as people are using what we call Acumen Cloud, which is our benchmarking utility. Over on the left-hand side, bottom left corner, where 0% and 0% converge, is what is this? Our x-axis here is our fuse schedule index, and we didn't make this up. These are real data points from real projects. As this schedule index, which I'll tell you right away is a quality-focused index, and I'll show you the elements of that. As this increases, the probability of on-time completion goes up to 100%. We've seen, honestly, we didn't know what these data points we were going to show, but we started getting the information in through Acumen Cloud. We started plotting them, and it makes good sense. If a schedule has high quality, if the team has gone through the rigor and the exercise to develop a high quality schedule and not accept a minimal or even a moderate level of quality, they see the results, they see the return on that time and tool investment with an extremely high probability of on-time completion. You will be able to see in using Fuse, we'll do this live today on my sample project. You're going to see exactly where you fall on this line. It's going to be a curve when we show it to you. It's going to be kind of a bell curve. We're going to get to that in a couple minutes. Some key best practices supporting S1 through S5. This is a little bit of review. Start with a sound basis of schedule. Don't accept anything less than a sound schedule as you get into the risk adjustment. Then when you're ready, account for the uncertainty and the risk events as separate. I'm going to show you that in Acumen Risk today. We're going to optimize the schedule with 360. You're going to use all that information you've generated in those first 3 steps to get the team buy-in, and we've got the tools to do that as well. So let's start with talking about Fuse. Just as a reminder, I'll go back a few slides here because I don't think I really emphasized this. The Acumen suite is comprised of 3 individual products that work together. In fact, they work all in the same environment. It's not 3 different icons on your desktop like Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. It's an integrated environment with these 3 components as well. In fact, today when you see me use the tool, you're going to see me open a single file one time and then use it throughout these 3 different applications. The first of which is Fuse, which is our more or less our S2 solution. Let me jump down to Acumen Risk, which falls within S3, and then finally 360, which falls in S4. And then the reporting and the whole suite I'll show you works together to get to your team-approved S5. Okay, let's talk Fuse. My goal today is to move steadily but expeditiously through the slides because I really want to get into the software demo and show you how quickly and easily I'm able to get to screens like this. This screenshot on the right, it looks pretty complex. It only takes a few seconds to set up your project like this, and it only takes me a few more seconds to explain to you that red is not so good and green is pretty good and yellow is kind of in the middle. So hoping to be able to show you that today. So let's get to it. Again, here's that quality word again. Understanding your shortcomings, addressing them in a visual way so you can understand what's going on, whether or not you're a scheduling expert or a statistician, for the goal of improving your project quality and overall having reliable project plans. The audience, we've listed a few key ones here. It's really wider than this, but these are good starting points with the tool. Schedulers and planners love this because they can check their quality at the source. They don't have someone coming back to them and telling them that they did something wrong or something wasn't planned right or something isn't linked. They can measure that themselves now and produce A+ quality work for review by program control. Program controls analysts get to take this and understand the overall quality of their cost and scheduling system. Forensic analysts, we have a module. You might not be able to see it now. You'll see it when we use Fuse. We have a module called Forensics, which is a forensic analyst's dream because they can see absolutely anything that's changed between multiple versions of the schedule. Some of our features, industry standard metrics, we're going to talk about that in spades, so I'm going to hold on for that right now. Forensic analysis we talked about. The dashboards and reports, this is just kind of one view up on the screen. This is one of many views and reports that we're able to show. Here's that benchmarking where I mentioned Acumen Cloud. We'll be looking at that. Many of you do use Primavera, and we have integration with P6 Web. So effectively, you're directly connecting the Acumen suite to your Primavera database without a series of imports and exports if you have many projects. Let's talk about these metrics. There's so many of them. In fact, I think we have close to or over 300 in the suite now. It can be a little intimidating at first. So we've broken it down into some high-level categories here to give you an understanding of just all these different things that you can measure in the tool. Schedule, cost, performance, characteristics, earned value, and risk. But even then, even within those, we have these subcategories. If I see at a high level, I have a schedule logic problem, you're going to watch me in the demonstration drill into a completely separate logic metric view, which shows me all these different logic metrics. And like we had on the previous screen, the red, yellow, green, just directing my eyes right to where the problems are on the schedule, and frankly helping me ignore the items for the time being, ignore the items that are green and that have no problems. Certainly we want to celebrate those, but before we go into our S3 phase, we want to make sure that we're green across the board. So we've incorporated, as we mentioned earlier, we have a lot of experience out there in industry. We've incorporated these best practices, these industry standards, PMI, AAC, NDIA. Just yesterday I was working on the Government Accountability Office, GAO, metrics, and upgrading those. DCMA, their 14-point schedule assessment, is in our tool. So what we've done is we've developed this metrics editor, which we and our customers use. It's right there for you in the tool. And we've just absorbed all these different standards, all these different ways that different companies, organizations, and industries look at their projects, and we've built those into the tool. So if you're doing an oil and gas project and you have specific focus metrics for your industry, they're in there. If you're a U.S. government contractor and you need those DCMA and GAO metrics, they're in there. In fact, we have customers who look across the standards and pick and choose the metrics from the different standards that they feel are going to be most representative of quality in their schedules. So it's amazing what you can do. I'm going to move forward now because I'm going to be showing you all this. There's some Acumen-specific metrics in the tool that you're going to see. They have descriptions in there because you might not be familiar with some of the terms that we've developed to describe these. You know, finished compliance, are your tasks finishing on time? Insufficient detail, is your activity count very low, but the duration overall in your schedule very high? Let's see, if I only have a few activities and I have extremely high durations, I don't think I'm detailed. Well, we put a number on that so that you can measure that across your schedules or within the same schedule from month to month, either way. Logic density, how many links do I have on tasks? Is it an excessive amount of links? Do I have these logic hotspots that are like Grand Central Station, you know, an activity that has 100 predecessors and then maybe has 100 successors as well? That might be accurate, but you might be creating a tremendous amount of risk by doing that, and it might not be the best way to sequence your logic. Or it might, but you'll be able to use the tool to understand where those hotspots are. Schedule redundancy, how much float you have per activity. If you have a very low float ratio, is this too aggressive a schedule? Is one little adjustment, is one little problem in our schedule going to undermine the whole plan? So these are some of the more advanced metrics that are sort of using other metrics and then producing an index or a ratio. Rest assured, we have all the basics in the application as well. Our activities finishing on time, do we have negative float, are we missing logic? I'll be showing you those. Here's this cloud that I was talking about earlier, and it relies heavily on our schedule quality index, which is comprised of some basic and some more advanced metrics. Like I consider missing logic to be a pretty basic metric. I either have full logic on an activity or I don't. This schedule didn't do so well on missing logic. Logic density, how many relationships I have per activity. This one did a little bit better. The percentage of my project that's critical. My use of hard constraints, negative flow, detail, lags, leads, and then how many of these merge hotspots that I have. The system takes all this data together. It doesn't take your schedule. It just takes the results of these metrics, and it plots them relative to all other projects that have been submitted to Acumen Cloud, which at this point I believe is tens of thousands. And one, you get a schedule index. That doesn't change. That's just based on these items. But now this percentile and probability of success, this isn't some mapping table that we have in the tool. This is the ever-growing table in Acumen Cloud of quality results combined with the success of the projects that are submitted. So it's showing us that this project's doing pretty well. We have this sort of bell-shaped curve. It kind of has taken on a life of its own because these are real projects. But we're in the green. We're towards the kind of the tip-off here. So we're doing pretty well. And frankly, if we can improve this missing logic and some of these other these lags that are towards the yellow or the red area, this project will have a very compelling case to show with a very high probability of success. Does that guarantee success? No way. Is it a good indicator of success? Yes, it is. And I would want my baseline to look at least like this one, maybe a little bit better, so that I can turn to my program manager and say, we've got management to do. We actually have to manage this program. However, our schedule is at the level of quality that puts it among the top in our industry for success. Schedule cleanser. This is very helpful as well. I'm not sure in the demonstration I'll get quite down to this level. Maybe if I can move quickly and stop talking so much. But the schedule cleanser helps me either wholesale or by selectively removing items. I can remove my hard constraints. I can remove my leads. I can convert my lags to activities to see on a critical path what impact they're really having on me. And we give you a way to do that without having to go back to the scheduling tool. We actually create a scenario and something that you can export as a schedule back to your scheduling tool using the schedule cleanser. Let me go into the tool finally. I'm going to open a project in Primavera. I just have this sample XER file. In fact, everyone who has the software installed has kind of a library of sample files available to them. So those are the ones I try to use in the demo since the users have access to them as well. And very quickly here, I've imported the project. I can look at the WBS hierarchy, confirm that I've opened the right project. I can see a little Gantt chart out here, and I can drill down to the lowest level of detail. To be honest, I don't use this screen very much. I use it more now that it has these neat calibration sliders that I'm going to be talking about later on with 360. But long story short, on this screen is this is how I get my information into the software. You can see that we have some of the commonly used tools as buttons across the top here, but there's some more secrets underneath each button where there's even more ways to bring projects in. And for instance, Primavera has a number of different ways, whether you're connecting through web services using XML, even P3's on there, and using single or multiple project XER files. Let's move on to, I can spend a lot of time talking about these individual settings, but let's get to the real heart of it for the purposes of the demonstration here. Let me go ahead and do a quick quality assessment on this schedule and just kind of see where we land here. We do have some missing logic. In fact, this looks suspiciously like the project that was used on that benchmarking slide because I'm looking for red. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even reading anything yet. I'm looking for red, and I'm seeing that we have 8 items that have missing logic. I've clicked here, and then I can see those items down here. And I also have a pretty high number of lags across a couple phases here. These phases consist of 2010 and 2011. I've got one lag out here in 2013, and I can click there, and I can look at that as well. Or if I'm not sensitive to what's going on in each individual year, I can go to the upper right-hand corner and I can see the totals for the project for each of these items. And I can click any one of those, and I can see all my 30 lags down here. I can scroll through this list and see exactly what's going on with my lags. I can also see any of the information that I need to see about those activities as well. To be honest, I hone in on the ID and the description and then look over in my scheduling tool and see if I have opportunities to remove those items or improve those items. Based on these metrics that have been chosen as the quality index, I get an aggregate score. Is 26 a good score or a bad score? Well, that's up to you. I don't like it. In fact, it's red. This means that my performance on these various metrics have conspired together to give me a low score on this project. If I start improving my missing logic, if I start reducing my lags, because those are part of my criteria, maybe I remove some of these hard constraints and find a better way to express them so they're not undermining my forward and backward pass. If I do all those things, that score is going to go up. So if I'm program control and a program manager, I'm not, you know, I was going to say maybe I could baseline this way. I definitely don't want to baseline with the missing logic. Maybe some of the other items I can live with. Maybe I'm under pressure to get to baseline and get to execution right away. But as I'm executing, I need to see this score go up from 26%. I want to see 80%, 90% there, maybe even 100% or close to it. Now, let's do some root cause analysis. What I've shown you so far is just the schedule as a whole. And we're getting good information. In fact, we're seeing that our schedule is not scoring very well. But let's go down the WBS a little bit and see which areas need the most help, need the most improvement. In fact, what I've done is I've expanded my view to level 2 of the WBS. I have a scroll bar here because I have some more items that'll fit on my screen. And I've sorted by score, best to worst. Let's be optimistic. Let's look at the good areas first. And, well, there's not too many of them. So what I can do, in fact, some of these score at 0%. I have a pretty small schedule. They might only have a couple activities in them. So when you only have a couple activities and those have metric problems, yeah, 0% is a possibility. But those would be my starting point, and I can certainly sort the other way around, so I see those on top of the list. And I can drill down from there. I can go to WBS level 3. Let's change this a little bit, and let's group by a field. Let's look at responsible manager, or what I call control account manager. Now this is a little scary because I brought it down to the individual names. So I'm able to see that Jane Meyer, the activities that are assigned to Jane are actually scoring 42%. Relative to the others here, that's actually not bad. Jim Smith has his work cut out for him. He's only scored 7%, and Terry Jones as well. In fact, all three of them have items that are showing red. So I could sit down with them as a program control resource and help them understand what they need to look at first. Jane needs to first look at missing logic, and then maybe understand why so many of her activities are on the critical path. For Jim, we have to start with these lags. And I need to sit with them and understand if these lags are something that can be expressed in activities that have work and resources associated with them. I have a feeling they're just trying to move some dates around and might be adding some lags just to paint a picture rather than to create a real schedule. Any other field that you have available to you from Primavera MS Project, custom fields that you've created, it's all fair game. You can group by any of those items. If you have a location or a responsible or performing department, you're covered. You can group by those. If you have a resource loaded schedule, we can group by the resources, and we can see the information that way as well. So this gives you an idea. This is a great starting point. This schedule quality tab is a great starting point. It's also the basis of the schedule quality index for Acumen Cloud. It doesn't stop there. Frankly, I'd be pretty happy if it did, but it doesn't. There's hundreds more metrics, and we've grouped them into all these different categories. So let's say I've got logic problems, which I do. Let's go to the logic tab. Whole new set of metrics just for logic. Missing predecessors, missing successors, a breakdown of the different relationship types that are being used. You can see these descriptions are coming up as in these boxes as I'm going through. So if you don't know what logic density means, you just hover over it, and it says, oh, it's the average number of links per activity. Same with merge hotspot, diverge hotspot, logic hotspot, open starts and finishes. So now that missing logic that had 8 items, that gets expanded into this entire analysis of the entire logic profile of my project. I've got some work to do. I can see now that my problem primarily, well, it's both. I have missing predecessors early on, but it seems like later on in our planning, we forgot to tie out all our activities with successors. Maybe some retraining is needed if these are all associated with one particular department or one particular responsible manager. It goes on and on. If I had a constraint problem on my schedule and I wanted to see exactly which type of constraints I was using and when, I can do that as well. If I want to look at my float picture, if I want to look at earned value or earned schedule, compliance with my baseline. I haven't loaded a baseline into this one, so I'm probably pretty compliant with it. My risk inputs, my risk exposure, analysis we can do after we've used our S3, Acumen Risk. Oh yeah, there's those S2s and S3s, S4s up there as well. Let me just pick one more. I think you get the point by now, is for your convenience, we've taken many of the hundreds of metrics and organized them into these categories to get started. There's no reason why you can't build your own. I'm able to pull the metrics up over on the side. Here's the metrics dictionary with all these categories, all these metrics you can choose from. It's kind of like your own construction set out here, where you can take these and then I can add these to my ribbon analyzer, which is up here, my phase analyzer down here. I can add it to all of them. I can have it with the intersection analyzer. I can have some of the information appear right here on the timeline. So the takeaway here is you get a tremendous amount of flexibility in what you're measuring. Briefly here, I'll show you how we can change this. So we're showing a trend on a line chart. I can make this a histogram. I get all my kind of Excel type charting options here as well. I can customize this screen to remove quadrants. I can produce this information for the benefit of executives, where it takes this information and it rolls it up in real English instead of these charts and diagrams. I can publish all of the underlying information to an analyst report to send to a subcontractor who might not have views to show them where their missing logic is. And all these categories, all these metrics, they become Excel tabs. And on the Excel tab is the information that they need to correct in the schedule. When I used this, I had 30 different subcontractors. So I would go in here and I would create these analyst reports to send to the different subcontractors who had problems in their schedule. Their first question always was, how did you develop this information? These are things that I don't know about my schedule that you've been able to figure out. And they were a little bit scared, frankly, that we had this level of information. But we worked together, and I showed them, hey, I want you guys to get to green. I want you to be a good supplier. I want to work with you on future contracts. So tremendous amount. I've really just scratched the surface. I probably went into too much detail, and I really scratched the surface on what this screen is capable of. It's fair for me to say I've spent most of my years with Fuse as a user using this screen. It's only recently that I've come over to Acumen to give seminars like this. Let's go to this logic tab. This is everything you wanted or didn't want to know about the logic in your schedule. We did have some logic metrics on the previous screen. This is the next level down of detail for logic. I won't need to spend quite as much time here as I did on the diagnostic screen. It's kind of intuitive. You can see the buttons are terrific because I don't always remember the definition of an open start. I know it's a start that isn't being driven by any other items. And then here's a visual picture where I do have a predecessor-successor relationship between these two activities, so it would actually pass a Primavera type logic check, but nevertheless, there's nothing driving the start date. It's got a finish-to-finish predecessor, but it doesn't have a predecessor that drives the start in any way. Conversely, open finishes, this looks like it has a start-to-finish relationship. I'm not sure I like that, but the finish date isn't driving anything. Why are we doing this activity? Well, there's a reason why we're doing this activity, and if we click here, we can see specifically which items in our schedule have an open finish and aren't driving anything based on their finish date. The usual suspects are here: reverse logic, out of sequence logic. Most organizations that I've worked with don't like to use logic on summary tasks, yet sometimes sometimes it appears that they will, so we can check that. Open ends, of course. Circular logic, hopefully a schedule doesn't get to this phase with circular logic, but guess what? They can. Someone can create logic after they do their Primavera or MS project calculation, and let's check mine. Oh, good. Okay, no circular logic. Someone can create circular logic, not recalc it, and send you the schedule, and they've just unknowingly sent you a schedule that has circular logic in it. Without having to go to Primavera and do your own calculation, you can check for circular logic right here. We have a redundancy index and the specific redundant items. I go to the picture where I can see that I have a path between three tasks, but then I also have a redundant path as well. So we don't need both, and it's telling you where you have both, and that's preventing you from having a smooth forward and backward pass, and it really can constrain you if you're trying to expedite your schedule. Lags and leads, I can look for those. Let me do one more thing here. I'm going to pull in a snapshot, kind of a second version of my schedule. And it's going to have an intuitive name. It's called 6-month update. I'm going to import it. Okay, let's go to forensics. I've talked about forensics, I think, twice now. Let's actually show you what it is. It's comparing absolutely every aspect between my initial plan and my 6-month update. If I want to see where I've added or removed activities, I can do that. You can see here, initial plan didn't have these 2 activities, but the 6-month update does. If I'm in an environment where tight scope control is needed, and I don't have documentation that shows why these 2 items were added, I've got to stop the presses for a minute and figure out what's going on. And that's what forensics helps me do. Modified relationships. We've gone from finish to start with -10 days of lag to finish to start with 0 days of lag. In some cases, we've removed relationships. In some cases, we've added relationships. Modified resource assignments, modified calendars. Has the subcontractor added a work shift to keep their schedule on track? Have they added it to their schedule but not in real life? I've run into that. Over here, any field in the schedule that you need to track from month to month can be added here. These are just the default ones. If you use user-defined field 10, and that's the name of the field, you can have that appear here as well. I'm not going to get to this level of detail, but we have a field mapping utility that takes the things that are important in your user-defined fields, and even the ones that aren't important, and maps those into either existing fused fields, like description, if you use a different field for description, or if you have development phase, which you track as a completely separate field, development phase could be one of the items here as well. That'd be a useful one to see any activities where the phase has changed. Why? Why has it changed? Was this something that we've done intentionally, or is this something that we need to correct? So I can freely take these 2 schedules. I could do it with 3, 4, 5 if I wanted to. Click any one of these fields, and I'll see all of the changes. It gives me the delta between the dates, so I can quickly understand that this is a 157-day difference right here. So really, the sky's the limit. And oh, by the way, you're going to keep seeing this publish button. I can publish this to Excel. It'll create a workbook where all of these items that are buttons will be individual sheet tabs in Excel. So the Excel user gets the benefit of all the information that's available to you, the Fuse user, on this screen. Okay, let's go back over to PowerPoint and let's talk about Acumen Risk. As we talked about earlier, we don't feel you have a reliable forecast if you don't perform the risk analysis function. You may think you know what your critical path is. However, if you have a non-critical path from a calculation perspective, but if it has a high amount of risk, it's what we call a hidden critical path. It's the path that's going to become critical as the program executes. I've had that happen on every program that I've worked on, where these critical paths that start out as secondary or tertiary critical paths in the program, by the midpoint, our critical path profile is completely different than it was at baseline. And all these near critical paths have negative float and have pushed the project past the contractual completion date. So we feel if you're not doing this risk analysis, you don't have realism in your forecast. You don't have a schedule that's ready for team buy-in. So let's talk about what Acumen Risk will help you do for risk analysis. You're going to be able to reduce your risk exposure, really understand your risk exposure first, understand where to spend your mitigation dollars. That's the most important thing to me in the world. Is we know we're in trouble. I know when we do a risk management exercise we're going to be in trouble, and then we have a budget, whether it's an explicit budget or an implicit budget, we have some way to perform mitigation, but we need to know where to perform that mitigation. And that's where we're going to drive towards in our Acumen Risk demonstration today. We're going to assign risk to this demo project, and then we're going to figure out where our mitigation dollars are best spent. Our audience, again, it's really wider than this, but let's talk about the top three. Risk analysts who are working today, like I was, with tools like Excel, or maybe some of the other risk tools that are out there. Project stakeholders, that can really be anyone involved. They need to understand where their money is being spent and if there's a reliable way to get to completion of the project in the dates and the budget that are needed for execution of the project. And of course, project managers, they need to understand every month, maybe even every week, where they stand with respect to risk and their ability to execute the project. Some of the key features in Acumen Risk are the ability to combine cost and schedule risk. You can do that even if your schedule is not cost and resource loaded. We have an integrated risk register, not just some Excel document that sits on the side like I've always had prior to Acumen Risk, but an actual risk register that integrates and links to specific activities in the schedule. I'm going to show you how easy that is. And then our goal with this demonstration is going to be to get to our top risk drivers so we know exactly where to spend those mitigation dollars. How does Acumen Risk work? I'll go briefly on this. It's based on CPM scheduling. It's running scenarios that are driven by the uncertainty and the risks that we bake into our risk model. And then also when we bring cost into the picture, we're going to see as durations become uncertain, cost becomes uncertain as well. There's no way on any project that I've experienced to expand the amount of time that it takes to execute the project and not have at least some cost impact. We use a Monte Carlo simulation, which, for lack of a better term, is a brute force approach. You'll get to control the number of iterations. It follows the logic. It does the forward and backward pass in every single scenario and gives you a reliable histogram to start working and a reliable risk impact chart. Most people call it a tornado chart. We like to think it's something a little bit different, and I'm going to show you why. Some alternate approaches. I'm going to move pretty quickly here because these are things that we don't want to do, but these are approaches that we've seen. One is to only risk load the critical path. What's the problem there? We talked about it earlier. It assumes that you know what your critical path is. Well, guess what? When some of those non-critical paths get risk loaded, they're going to become the critical path, or they have a likelihood of becoming the critical path. So we don't like that method. We feel that puts blinders on you to some of the things that can surprise you. And risk management is about understanding your surprises. So don't blind yourself to them, and embrace them. Another method we see used quite often, actually, is creating a summary schedule that's utilized just for the purposes of understanding risk and maybe even facilitating a risk workshop. People love this because it gives them a way to understand really what's going on in like a 20 or 30,000 line schedule. It's you can create this abstract schedule, that's what I call it, and put it up on a couple screens or hand it out on a couple sheets of paper, and everyone can look at it and say, oh, okay, I understand the 40,000 foot view of this schedule. The problem is it becomes a very difficult exercise to create a logical risk model. By summarizing the schedule and creating this abstract, you're losing the logic integrity, the calendars, the detail of the schedule. If you recall, I said our Monte Carlo simulation does a true forward and backward pass. Not only that, but it respects the calendars. It respects all the detail and activities in the schedule down to the absolute lowest level of detail. It's kind of a bottoms-up approach to risk calculation, and it does it so quickly, and you're able to load the uncertainty and the risk so easily in Acumen Risk, even on a large schedule. There's no reason to have a summary schedule. You're going to see me go top down when I do my uncertainty assessment and when I do some of my risk mapping. when I go top down, as long as my schedule is built on a WBS, I'm getting all those benefits of working with a summary schedule without having to create, as we say here, a separate model that I need to maintain as well. I don't want to maintain two schedules. You know, a large schedule is enough of a handful without me needing to every month look at the summary schedule and make sure it's correlated and integrated with my detailed master schedule. That's an exercise that I'd like to prevent if I can. Acumen Risk gives me the ability to work as expeditiously as though I'm using a summary schedule while working with the detailed schedule. Uncertainty factor, we give you a very easy, graphically compelling way to do 3-point uncertainty estimating on every activity in your schedule. You can go top down from the summary level and do this very quickly. My demonstration is going to be worth 1,000 words compared to the slide here, but some of the key points that you're going to see me do it very quickly. More quickly than engineers can come up with the uncertainty profile. I'll be able to move the slider and keep up with them. It's removing the complexity. We're talking colors and sliders. We're not having people sit down and calculate the distribution type and then put in the numbers, the 3-point estimates based on, you know, no. Eliminates crazy rankings. That sounds good. I'll show you how we do that and how crazy rankings, we can do them if we need to, but we can also show how they would stick out like a sore thumb. And we can group this view. This is very important, by WBS. But if you remember on the diagnostic screen, I was grouping by, or I showed you how I was able to group by location. I actually did group by responsible manager. We can do that when we're determining our uncertainty profile as well. I'll be able to group and regroup this schedule any way that I need to. Example of that is if I had a location that was a higher risk location due to any number of factors. I don't know, maybe due to earthquakes. We can group by that location and take all activities that are assigned with that location and make those higher risk activities. There's an uncertainty template where I determine how those sliders work. Let's leave it there for now because I'm going to show you this on the screen, and I'm going to show you exactly how this uncertainty factor editor works and how the information you create in it can be saved and used and applied as a template to other programs. Risk events. Here's the next step. We've talked about uncertainty and assigning uncertainty to tasks. Well, what if I have separate risk events that can harm my execution process? Well, how do I identify those and rank those? Well, I do that in my risk register. In fact, the system produces this red, yellow, green based on the information that I've told it about the risk. This is another screen that I'm going to show you. Probably not going to get into all the little things that you can change because every aspect of your risk process is configurable. We start with the standard, for instance, the 5x5 probability and impact matrix, but there's nothing preventing you from changing. In fact, I'm going to show you visually how I grow this to a 9x9 and then back down to a 5x5. There's nothing stopping you from taking Acumen Risk, modifying the template on the previous screen and the uncertainty template, and then this event template, and conforming Acumen Risk to your process. We don't use software to drive process. We use process to drive software, and that's what we let you do here. Finally, and you're going to see me do this live, we're going to take our risk events and actually map them to activities so that the risk event will drive uncertainty in our schedule. The critical exercise becomes not managing the tool. You'll see how easy I use the tool. The critical exercise becomes the team sitting down, taking a hard look at that risk register, and then for each risk determining where it will ripple into the schedule and impact different activities. So you'll have the ability to take labor strike, for instance. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that's not a risk for you, but if it is, you'll get to map that in to the very specific activities or if you desire, the high-level summaries that would be affected by a labor strike in your schedule. You get to determine the probability and the impact as well. What we don't show here is if you want to put labor strike in active mitigation through negotiations or other mitigation methods, you'll be able to assign a mitigation profile to labor strike as well. Risk-adjusted schedule is okay. We've spent all that time putting information in, which really isn't a lot of time, and then we run the simulation, and we start getting information out of the tool. It does this forward and backward pass 1,000 times, 10,000 times. You can converge on a specific accuracy level. It'll just keep running the simulation until the results don't vary by more than 1%, or if you want to change that to 5%, that's fine too. You can run it just taking your risk events into account without mitigation. We're going to run it both ways. We're going to run it with risk events, and then we're going to switch, and we're going to run it with mitigation, and we're going to see the difference between the two. Risk exposure. I'm going to show you this histogram live, but we're going to see some default dates, P50, P75 dates that come out of the system. But if we want to know our 80% probability date, we can do that. You're going to see me drag over this live and show you for these different distribution values what the probability is as well. This is this tornado chart that we think is frankly better than anything else we've seen or used out there. This is where we can prioritize. We see the impact of our different risk drivers, and we can prioritize our mitigation based on what's having the most impact on our project. We're going to compare 3 different scenarios. If I have enough time, I'll get to 3 different scenarios. If I need to keep moving, I'll just do 2 scenarios. And let's go to Acumen Risk. Enough of this PowerPoint stuff. Notice I just went over to S3 Acumen Risk. Here's the project that I had just loaded and used in Fuse. Let's assign some uncertainty, and we can do it as quickly as I am here. I just did it at the summary level under feed. So all these activities under this summary, the uncertainty profile, which I moved to light red, which is going to extend our durations when we run the simulation, they all went along for the ride. If I want to adjust one individually, I can. So using 2 sliders, I just adjusted a summary and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks. If this were 100 tasks under here and I moved the summary, they would all move. Well, wait, one of them didn't move. Oh yeah, that's the one I adjusted manually, so it stayed locked. If I want to unlock it, I can go here and now it goes back along. Let me adjust my screen a little bit here because I want to show you what's going on here to the right. Minimum duration, most likely maximum duration. As I move the slider, those values are changing. I used to have to 10 key in Excel all these different items. I can still do that if I want to. I can overtype any of these. It'll override the slider. In fact, it'll make the slider lighter to show that, that we're not using the slider for that item. So I'm going to move some of these sliders. And as I'm doing this, even though I don't have these items expanded, it's made the adjustment underneath. And just for kicks, let's go change one there, because I can. I can even go at the top project level if I want to. Let's adjust a couple of these others. I don't know why I make things look so bad in demonstrations. Maybe it leads to better demonstration, or maybe for some projects it's more realistic. Who knows? All of these values that it's assigning for the 3-point estimates, those are defined in this uncertainty template. In fact, right now my slider has 5 choices. It can have as many as 7 choices, or just a couple if you want. Some teams just like 3. Is it conservative? Is it realistic? Or is it aggressive? We've gone, to some finer shades of meaning. If you have your own terminology, that's fine too. Just overtype it on here on the template. If you think your most likely is actually 105% of the original duration, well, it's got 110. I can change these. Most likely doesn't have to mean 100% of the original duration. Your team, your projects, they might traditionally underestimate the effort required, and you can build that factor in. Let's go ahead and run the Monte Carlo simulation. Some of you might be saying, well, you haven't loaded risks in yet. You've just looked at uncertainty. Absolutely. We can run the simulation anyway. I'm going to be pulling in risks in a minute, but let's just get that first look. It's asking me to save because I haven't in a while, so let's do that. Okay, now let's run this simulation. It goes through 1,000 iterations very quickly. And let's go to the top level here. This is the uncertainty profile for our project. I have bad news for everyone. Our deterministic finish date of January 31st has about a 0% chance of occurring. We have a 50% probability of meeting February 25th, 75% of March 4th, and 100% of April 10th. I'm going to add an 80%. I'm just going to go up to 80. I'm going to right click, and it's just added 80% of March 6th. And let's see the contingency that I'd need in my schedule to guarantee that 80% date. I'd need to find 34 days to meet my 80%. We don't stop here with this histogram. This is the project level view. Some people like the graphics. I'll be honest with you guys, I go straight for the table to see what my best case P50, P75 is. That doesn't mean you can't go out here on the table and see, or on the chart, and see exactly what your probability is at all these different dates. So if you have a contract completion date, maybe that was a couple weeks after January 30th, maybe January 30th was your goal, but you really need to be done by February 15th. You can go out to February 15th on the chart and see what your probability is of meeting that date. And let's see, we got about 18%. So we need to have a serious conversation about how we're going to get there. I can go to each one of the functional areas, or the location, or the responsible manager, and I can pull up a custom probability histogram for each one of those areas. So I can sit down with individuals and show them what their profile looks like and see if they're at 0%, or if they, this one's at 0%, that one's at 1%, but it looks like everyone's got some work to do. Let's go ahead and go to the risk register. I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna import one that we give you with the product. It's called Populated Risk Register. And these are risks that we've identified that could potentially be associated with the items in this project schedule. In fact, some of them, I've imported the mapping as well. Manufacturing, we've previously mapped to risk number 9. So there's a relationship between these two items right now. Risk number 9, its behavior, and as it comes up in the Monte Carlo simulations, it's going to affect manufacturing. Even though manufacturing has no duration uncertainty assigned to it, it has this risk assigned to it. In fact, this risk has a very high probability of occurrence, and when it does occur, it has a very high schedule impact and a very high cost impact. If I'm in manufacturing, I'm going to want to keep an eye and potentially mitigate risk number 9. In fact, it scores as 25, which is the worst score that we can have. You'll be able to define that score to anything that you want. Now, there's mitigation steps underway. They can do some early procurement. The cost will be $500,000, but that'll reduce the probability to very low. In fact, the overall score would become 5 and put us in the green. So that's impressive. If they have the $500,000 to spend and they can mitigate this risk to a very low probability, manufacturing is going to be happy. So the question becomes, do we have the $500,000, and is this the best place to spend the $500,000? We don't know yet, because there might be some other areas that are more critical. This is my indicator, my graphical indicator that this item has been mapped to a risk. I'm going to map civil design to a risk. And we can tell here that I've mapped it to a risk that scores red. In fact, I can go many to many. I can map it to 4 risks. I can go to feed. I can map it to some risks. I'm obviously doing this arbitrarily. And so, you know, I can go anywhere and perform this mapping process. Before I run the Monte Carlo with the risks, let's at least spend a minute or so on the risk matrix template. Because I'm throwing out some terminology here, like very high probability, very high schedule impact. I can't put a duration on very high. Well, I can. I just have to know. What I'm doing. I have to know what very high means. And I could probably spend 30 minutes on this screen alone. I don't have 30 minutes, so I'm going to move a little more quickly than that. I can control my probability ranges. This is where very high comes from, and this is what it means: greater than 75%, very low, less than or equal to 10%. I can change these names. I can change these values. Here's the impact ranges. I can change these names. I can change the values. Very low impact is less than 10 days. Very high impact is around 50 days. I can change those to percentages of the original duration and cost as well, where schedule, very high impact is about 10%. I can change my scoring thresholds. If you remember, some of those scores were red. I can make more of the scores red if I want to. It's all a matter of what my existing process defines in these categories, or if I'm defining a process, we give you the ability to use these sliders to help you get to the process that you're looking for. I can score this from 1 to 25. I can change this, the worst score, to 100. I can make an asymmetrical scoring matrix where I go red down the line here with a score of 20. The flexibility is yours. Custom fields, we give you, for the risk register, we give you owner. That can be changed. We can change custom field 1 to location, mitigation date, whatever we need to, and then we can enable those over here. So I am going to, let's see, we'll click OK on that, and we can save that template as well and use it on other programs. Let's see, we've mapped risk. Let me run another Monte Carlo simulation. And I think things really went from bad to worse. I was at 0% deterministic finish day before. One thing I noticed right away is my contingency for P80 went up. So I'm in a less favorable situation. I need even more contingency than I needed earlier to hit my 80% confidence level. Let's see, let's add this to a risk comparison. Let's see which risks are driving us the most. Oh, one sticks out right away. Risk 42 is driving me to a 31-day impact at P50. I can show this at P80. I can show this at any other confidence level. I know now where I'm going to spend my mitigation dollars first. If I have some left over, I'm going down here. But I will tell you right away, if you are able to mitigate risk number 42, you're going to get day for day back from that investment. Let's look at this a slightly different way. These are the risks down the left-hand side, and then in the legend here are the activities that those risks are impacting. So it's kind of the same information as I have here, but it's whether you want to talk from a activity perspective and then which are being affected by which risks, or from a risk perspective and then which activities the risks are affecting. This is your roadmap for mitigation right here. Let's look at a comparison. This first line, this was my confidence profile when I just had uncertainty, and this is when I loaded the risks. Let's go to P50. there's a 77-day impact of my risks overall at the P50 level of confidence. If we ran another iteration, and I'm not going to have time for that this morning, we could change our risks, we could put our mitigation plans in place, and we would see which direction this S-curve was going to head. If we're mitigating and we're doing it well, our S-curve will move to the left. In other words, we can put additional S-curves on this screen, and we can measure the difference between any two of them. If we add risk and run another simulation, we're going to have an additional S-curve out here to the right. You can track this any way that you want. You can do this every month and add your S-curve for that month. You can do scenario analysis where you add 4 or 5 risks that you're not sure you're ready to add yet, but if we did, what would the impact be? And you could put another S-curve representing those risks on this screen. So this is really basic functionality. It basically takes a picture of your S-curve and then just overlays them. But for me, it's very powerful to see where I'm heading. It's one thing to have a single point of data. It's another thing entirely to see if you're trending in the right direction. For Acumen Risk, the two most helpful things to me, obviously we have a number of items here, are the item I just showed you, the risk comparison, and then once again, this risk driver showing me the answer in terms of days. Traditionally, you'll see a tornado chart in terms of percent impact, percent criticality. We have those measures. We have those items. I leave it right here on this schedule contribution to show me day for day where risk is impacting me, as it did the Monte Carlo P50 or any other of my exposure values, for instance, P80 here, 36 days and 117 days overall. Things that I haven't shown you that are there, in fact, we have some YouTube videos out there that show off some of the additional techniques. Bringing in a cost overlay, meaning that if I don't need a cost-loaded schedule, I can pull in an Excel file that represents the cost, whether or not it's even structured according to this WBS, and I can map the items from a cost matrix to a schedule matrix and then do my cost risk analysis that way. And if anyone's looking for more information on that, we can certainly provide that and actually give you links to our YouTube videos as well. Those links are on our website as well. Let's go to 360. And then Jen's going to talk to us about what's coming up in just a few days in Fuse 4.1. Acumen 360 is about project optimization. As I mentioned earlier, that risk exercise, I don't think it's going to move your schedule to the left or to an earlier finish date. I think you're going to end up with a finish date, a forecast finish date that's to the right or into the future. It may cross your pain threshold of what you're willing to tolerate in your schedule in terms of a target completion date. Acumen 360, it doesn't do it for you, but it really helps you generate scenarios that get you to a date that you're looking for, which kind of means that it does it for you. But you've got to be careful because we can't take a 9-year project and have it occur in 9 days. So 360 is going to help us focus on the areas that we can expedite while leaving the ones alone that we know that we can't. In fact, there's 3 different ways to use Acumen 360. Some are more simple than others, but with complexity comes the enhanced intelligence as well. So let's start with the basics. We can talk acceleration. Let me get this snapshot out of the way because we're going to be creating a few more scenarios here. Start with a simpler view. Okay. Over here, I have calibration sliders. This is my accelerator or decelerator. This is my gas pedal and my brake pedal all in one. It's going to tell me before I do anything that it needs to create a scenario. It's not going to let me trick myself into expediting or decelerating my plan, it's going to create a scenario for me. And that's fine because I can do anything I need to with my scenario, even bring it back to the scheduling tool. I'm going to start moving these sliders and focus your attention on the Gantt chart over on the right-hand side. Requires less time. It's actually expediting the activities. And as I move to the right, it's actually decelerating the activities. And if you have a really keen eye, you can see as I'm doing it in one area, some of the other areas, especially this one, are affected. Well, why is it doing that? If I'm adjusting this slider here, how come it's affecting items down here? Well, it's doing a complete forward and backward pass on the schedule as I'm moving these sliders. So there's downstream impacts based on the relationships between activities under this summary task and activities under this summary task. It doesn't work in a silo. It calculates the whole. In fact, this one seems to have a tremendous amount of impact. It's extending the entire, extending the entire schedule. This is a very quick way to accelerate or decelerate. You have to be careful because I could go down here and tell it that everything requires much less time and my schedule will finish quicker. Well, that might not necessarily be true. So the system needs to trust my judgment when I'm using these sliders. It needs to trust that I'm doing something achievable. This is great for proposal schedules where you need to take an existing schedule and either build in or reduce a complexity factor to create a new prototype of the schedule. But I'm going to show you another. Method that we have. I'm going to go back to this initial plan, and this is goal-based acceleration, where I can give the system a set of rules or parameters that I want to follow and I want to respect, but I still want to pick a finish date and have it try to meet that finish date. Oh, and by the way, some items that might prohibit me from expediting the schedule, I can remove as part of the acceleration exercise. Hard constraints really sticks out to me as something that would undermine a schedule acceleration exercise, and I can remove them. I can also remove these other items or even convert my lags. Let's pick a finish date. I'm going to be pretty aggressive here. I'm going to see if this January 31st schedule can finish on August 22nd. So I told it August 22nd. The other thing, I could move this slider, kind of the compression slider, see how far I can push it. Then I also get to pick these acceleration scripts as well. These are different strategies. I'm going to show you what's behind these strategies briefly. But for right now, I'm going to see if the system can find a way through our normal acceleration script to meet an August 22nd date. It has. Let's see, our original project was January 31st. Our target was August 22nd. It actually got us to August 21st, 2012, and then it stopped because that's what we needed. It got us within a day, and it was satisfied with that. Once I have that, I can add that as a scenario. So we'll see an additional scenario pop up here in a second. And if I want to, I can take that scenario and I can export that back to my scheduling tool and use that as my new master schedule. Be careful, everyone's going to buy into it. S5, what's a good way to do that? Forensics. See what we've changed. See what we can stand up to. I guarantee you it reduced some durations. It might have even run some activities in parallel that weren't previously in parallel. We have to make sure that the engineering staff can actually accomplish that and that they're willing to commit to it. Let's look briefly at what's going on behind the scenes. You may remember these terms on the screen: normal acceleration, conservative, lag-based acceleration. Each one of these strategies has steps associated with it. Reduce predecessor lag by 50%. Then, if we still haven't met the finish date that we want, it'll start reducing successor lags by 50% and try to get you to that goal date. There's even further complexity down here. I can even filter these steps to look for activities that have any location, any responsible manager, anything that you've used in your custom fields. I can only look at critical activities if I want to and reduce those. Of course, a new critical path might emerge as well. Amazing amount of flexibility in here to focus in on the areas that you feel can be accelerated while leaving the other ones alone. There's no project out there where every element of the project can be accelerated. Your experts, your program manager and your engineering managers, if they're willing to have a candid discussion, they'll be able to help you understand which areas might be prone to an acceleration, to benefiting from an acceleration exercise. Again, as I work with it, it doesn't replace my original plan. I develop scenarios, and then I have the ability with 360, with Acumen Risk even, to take my risk-adjusted and my accelerated scenario and then bring it back over into my schedule tool at your discretion. It's not a mandatory step. If you get scenarios that you can't live with, you can simply discard them. Okay, so I've gone into detail. I gave you the high level. I've gone into detail. Hopefully, I've done a pretty good job of kind of going through each one and pulling it all together. Jen, if you're there, I'm going to switch over to you. And Jen is going to talk to us today about some cool features that are coming in our 4.1 release, which build upon many of the areas that I've shown you in the demonstration today. So Jen, I'm going to give you control. I'm going to say make presenter. We'll see how this works. Okay, Jen, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
You've got it.
Okay. All right, so as Tom mentioned, I'm Jen Weber. I'm the marketing manager here at Acumen, and we wanted to just give you a quick sneak peek at what's coming in our next release of the Acumen software suite. You should, if you are already a Fuse user or a Risk user, you should start to see these new features or get the update notice within the next couple of days. So since we're a little bit limited on time, I think rather than me showing you the slides or kind of walking through the new features in slide, I'm going to jump right into Fuse and actually demonstrate them for you here. So one of the first new things you'll see is on the Projects tab. We now have integration with Phoenix Project Manager in addition to the traditional Oracle, Microsoft Project, Microsoft Excel, all of the integration that we had. We've added the ability for you to do your schedule diagnostics, your risk analysis, and even your acceleration that Tom showed you using a schedule built in Phoenix. We've also added the ability or support for multi-databases in P6 Web as another integration feature. In Fuse, one of our, I guess there's been two major new features, and both of them happen to be new analysis methods. So as Tom showed you in the current version, you have the ability to look at your schedule by time phases. So this can be years, dates, quarters, any kind of time slice that you want to do, and you can analyze your metrics across time. With the new trend analysis feature, rather than looking at the metrics across time, you can now analyze them based on project snapshots. So I have my initial plan project here, and I can see all of my metrics for that, my 1 month update, my 6 month update, and then my current schedule. If you wanted to look at this using project snapshots, as I've done, that's possible. If you wanted to say you weren't looking at an integrated master schedule and you wanted to look at individual work package schedules, so you could have, your engineering schedule here, your construction schedule here, and so on, and break them up that way. So what that allows you to do is, rather than just looking at the project, you can still group the activities by a common field. So you can see here we've done it by activity status, and I can see within my initial plan there were 0 activities that were complete. I was able to complete 3 of them by my 1 month update, 8 of them by my 6 month update, and then in my current schedule I have 15 activities completed. So it shows you how the different metrics or the different progress is being made across your project snapshots. If you wanted to look at something, say you were just interested in looking at how the score is changing or how the quality of each of these projects is improving with each update, you can look at that down here in the bottom analysis, the phase analyzer. So you can see originally I had a score of 26%. This has gone all the way down to 23% in my current schedule. And if I wanted to even get a little bit more detailed, I can add that score to my intersection analyzer. And now I can see within each grouping for each project what that score is and how it's changing across the snapshots. The second new analysis feature added to Acumen Fuse is this logic sensitivity test. So what this allows you to do is it's going to basically show you how sensitive is your schedule or different activities within your schedule to a delay. So you can select any activity within your schedule. I'm going to choose do secondary long lead items. You can identify how much duration you want to add or how much you want to push that nudge activity. We'll just leave it at the default of 600 days. And then you can select which activity you want to look for the impact on. So what this is going to tell me is if I were to delay secondary long leads by 600 days, what impact will that have on the project finish? So it quickly runs the analysis and it charts that impact for me. So I can see there's no delay all the way up until I've gotten to 156 days. So I have all the way until 156 days of delay before project finish starts to be impacted. And then from there, I can actually see what the impact is. So at 270 days of delay, that impacts my finish date by 154 days of delay. So if I wanted to, I can look at this at any number of impact all the way up to 600, which was the full amount that we added, and see how much the full delay impacts the total project finish. And you might have seen the option, you can create a scenario at any of these days. So if you wanted to, say you were comfortable with a slip of 220 days and you wanted to go ahead and create a scenario with this criteria, you could do that directly from this screen. So the goal is to show you either how much delay you can expect or how much impact you can expect on project finish from a delayed activity, or to tell you how much nudge or how much room you have on a given activity before it starts to impact projects or milestones later down in the project. So those are the two main new features, I guess, in Acumen Fuse. We've also added a couple of new things to Acumen Risk. So the first is now you have the ability to use to do weather modeling or discrete calendar event modeling. So rather than being limited to a threat and opportunity, and like you are in the current version of Fuse, you can add a calendar event or a weather event. So say you wanted to make sure to include the impact of a potential hurricane, and you knew that hurricane season for this project was only in the months of, say, June through November. So I've added in my window or my hurricane timing to the project. I've added that risk activity, and then just like in the current version, you can go back and map that to which activities this hurricane or the hurricane season might impact. The other option is to add a risk window, and this is for things like, or this is for potential risks where you know it's going to happen, but you're not quite sure of the timing of when it's going to happen. So say you knew that a possible risk for your project was a frozen canal, but you weren't quite sure when it was going to freeze over. It could be as early as December, but it could be as late as maybe February, and you're not quite sure how long that's going to last. You can add in your minimum dates, your most likely dates, and your maximum dates for that frozen canal and how it will affect the project, and then go ahead and map those or map that risk event back to the activities. With both risk windows and calendar events, you have the option to decide if you want to prevent the activities from splitting across the risk window. So looking at the hurricane, if I chose to prevent activities from splitting, and one of my activities was supposed to occur in June, that would move that whole activity, the start and finish, all the way until after hurricane season. If I allowed splitting, it would allow me to do some of the work on that activity before the hurricane season and some of the work after, or finish it up after that season. And same for the risk window. And then the final, or I guess one of the more exciting new features of Acumen Risk is the risk advisor. So Tom showed you during the demo how you can go through and risk load or uncertainty load all of the activities within your schedule. But we found with a lot of our customers is they want a little bit more guidance as to what a common uncertainty assignment would be. So you can use the risk advisor to kind of make suggestions based on your schedule of what uncertainties you should assign to each activity. And you have a couple of criteria options. So you can have suggestions based on schedule quality. So for any activity that has a schedule quality score or a fuse index score of greater than 75, the risk advisor will show that as a conservative activity. If it's less than 10% fuse quality score, it's going to flag that as a very aggressive activity. Your other options are to look at historical performance. You can focus on a specific metric. So if you wanted to look at anything with a logic hotspot, maybe we'd want to flag that more aggressively than those without logic hotspots. Or if you had a custom field or a standard field you wanted to set your criteria suggestions on, you could do that as well. But let's do it with schedule quality. So Fuse has gone through and looked at the schedule index or the schedule quality score of every single one of my activities and come back and told me that based on that score, what my uncertainty profile should be. So you can see that here in the recommendations column. So for the whole of detailed design, I have a schedule quality of 0%. So it's telling me that, or it's suggesting that I flag these activities as very aggressive. So I can do that at the summary level, or in the case of, let's look at construction. Within construction, there are different assignments for each activity. I could apply the summary assignment to all of these activities, or I could take the individual assignments for each activity and have those applied. And you can pick and choose which ones you want to do. If you disagree with the recommendation and you still want to set your own uncertainty assignments, you can definitely do that. And just as Tom showed you in the demo, these assignments automatically get populated to the min, most likely, max. So you're doing your 3-point estimate. The risk advisor just kind of gives you a little bit of guidance as to what these assignments should be. We've also added the ability in Acumen Risk to the risk factors approach, so assigning probabilities and a min, most likely, max to your risk events. And we've also given you the ability to generate P schedules or generate new scenarios based on either the risk input, so you can generate a scenario just based on these uncertainty assignments that you've done, or after you run the analysis, if you wanted to generate, say, a P50 schedule or a P75 schedule, you can do that as well. And of course, all of those scenarios can be pushed back to your traditional scheduling tool, Primavera or Microsoft Project, whatever you're using. So I think that quickly covers all of the new features. Tom, did you want to answer any of the questions that came through, or? I know we only have about a minute left, but.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many questions come across. Actually, if you switch over to me, I'll put the media slide up that shows like where people can find some more information.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Jen, I'm so jealous that you have 4.1 right now, and then that you have the pre-release version, and that I don't. That's tremendous capability. The weather modeling with the risk register, it goes so far beyond just assigning individual risks and defining individual risks. Now, whether or not it splits, whether you should start an activity or not prior to a weather event, and the risk advisor. People have asked us, a lot of these features have come from questions and suggestions that we've received. The risk advisor is one of them, where people have asked, how can we work even more quickly? How can we get to that first Monte Carlo simulation even more quickly than we have? And they've reached out to us. And on the screen here are different ways that you can learn more information and then reach out to us as well on Twitter, and there's our email address as well. We have a number of white papers up on projectacumen.com. Some have YouTube videos associated with them, and we also have a software trial available of all 3 products.
And I know one of the common questions we do get is after the webinar, we will send out the slides as well as a recording of the presentation along with your PDU information. So look out for that email later this afternoon. And I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap up, Tom.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone, for participating today.
Thank you.